Hello, welcome to the channel Why Stories. Enjoy watching.
10 years after graduating from school, all the classmates decided to meet, and thanks to social media, there was no trouble to find everyone. Ada was looking forward to the event. After all, she had arguably achieved more than the rest and had plenty to be proud of. Ada understood that she was a great success, having built a business from scratch entirely on her own, without any help from her parents. Her mom and dad even hindered her, dissuading her, describing scenarios of failure, and assuring her that one couldn't earn much through honest means. They still couldn't believe that their daughter was a successful businesswoman and the owner of the coolest dance school in town. Ada didn't hold any grudges against them and showered them with gifts. Thanks to their daughter, her parents had their first trip abroad and saw the sea. Luz was also eagerly awaiting the classmates' meeting. Like Ada, she had plenty to be proud of. She excelled in her position as a director and received corresponding financial rewards for her contributions. So she also had an apartment, a car, and vacations in various parts of the world. She wanted to meet her former classmates in this successful image, young, beautiful, and successful. Some of them used to call Luz a beggar because of the worn-out hand-me-downs she received from her older sisters, so now they could admire her. The meeting was fun, warm, and heartfelt. The grown-up classmates were genuinely interested in seeing each other and reminiscing about the past. It turned out that almost all of Ada and Luz's school friends were married for a long time. Many of them already had more than one child. The young parents were proud to show each other photos of their little babies. Ada felt a slight sadness. She also wanted to start a family, but first, the business took up a lot of her time, and now, the successful owner of a network of dance schools was afraid of falling into a trap, as she had heard too many stories about gold diggers lately. Luz seemed like she hadn't suffered at all from not being married and not having children. She enjoyed her freedom and financial independence to the fullest, having fun in nightclubs and engaging in short-lived passionate affairs. "We still have time to load ourselves with that yoke around our necks," she once said to Ada when they happened to discuss the topic. "Having children doesn't require much intelligence. Look at my parents, no education, both workers, and they brought into the world children. Creating a business from scratch like you did is not something every woman can accomplish. You can be proud of yourself." Luz grew up in a large family. Her parents worked hard, holding multiple jobs to support their sons and daughters. Consequently, their life was harder materially than of Ada's family, much harder. Just like her friend, Luz had dreamt of escaping poverty from an early age, and now that her deepest desire had come true, she fully enjoyed her position and opportunities. At the meeting, Sergio was also there. He was well known for his comedian nature, such a charismatic joker, and Ada's first love, although he never found out about it. Ada was a typical introvert in school. She studied well, spent all her time on lessons and extracurricular activities, and rarely participated in events like group outings to the cinema or ice skating. She didn't belong to the class elite. Sergio, on the other hand, seemed to lead it. Everyone loved him for his sparkling sense of humor and penchant for adventures. It was always fun to be around him. However, the guy was a terrible student. Perhaps he had some abilities, but he preferred partying over studying. Sergio managed to charm even the teachers at school. Thanks to his natural charisma and ability to manipulate people, he graduated high school without any Fs. Ada observed him from a distance as a senior student. She never dreamed that he would notice her. There were legends about his romantic conquests. She was attracted to his ease in social situations, self-confidence, and, let's not hide it, his very appealing appearance. He only approached her when he needed help with homework. Ada never refused. After all, any interaction with him was better than nothing, especially since Sergio always rewarded her with his trademark charming smile with dimples on his cheeks. At the restaurant during the meeting, Sergio was just as charismatic and charming as before. With age, he had become even more attractive. The female members of the company brightened up in his presence. Former classmates, even those with multiple children or heavily pregnant, tried to get his attention, laughed exaggeratedly at his jokes, and caught Sergio's gaze. In short, everything was just like 10 years ago. Only Sergio himself had become more serious. No, he still made witty jokes and created a cheerful, light-hearted atmosphere around him, but the young man didn't flirt with anyone and skillfully deflected the excessive attention from tipsy ladies, ensuring they didn't feel offended. In school, he never missed an opportunity to tease one of his classmates. Ada liked this new, more mature Sergio even more. It turned out that not much had changed in 10 years. She still felt a bit shy in his presence. She still wanted to be near him, to see his blue eyes with a mischievous spark, to catch his smile, to admire the dimples on his cheeks. Only now, Sergio finally saw her. Ada often noticed that he would fix a fascinated gaze on her. She understood perfectly well that she looked much better now than in school. Stylish clothes, skillful makeup, workouts, and visits to a cosmetologist had all produced wonderful results. She was used to compliments about her appearance, but they didn't have the same impact as the genuine interest in Sergio's eyes. According to him, he worked as a chief engineer in a local oil company, earned a good income, which was evident from his expensive watch and branded items. It turned out that the charming former classmate was still unmarried and had no plans to settle down at the moment. He had some career plans, so he couldn't focus on starting a family during this period. After the restaurant, Sergio suggested taking a walk at night. They walked and talked and talked. Ada was enchanted by Sergio's voice. She looked at him and could agree with every word he said. Sergio and Ada started dating. Just a couple of months later, he moved into her apartment. And then they got married. There was no lavish wedding, no toastmaster, nor a crowd of guests. Sergio wanted it to be that way. Why should we throw a celebration for people we don't even know? It's better to go somewhere, just the two of us, he said. The newlyweds chose to escape to a warm seaside for their honeymoon. It was a romantic and unforgettable vacation. Gentle waves, hot sun, excellent service, and beside her was her handsome beloved husband. It was like a fairy tale, a dream come true. Ada felt happy and tried to push away thoughts of Sergio losing his high position in his company the day before. It wasn't the time for sad reflections during their honeymoon. What could they do? Company changed direction, so it affected the rules. Of course, the director put his people in key positions. Ada could understand that. She would have done the same. But it didn't matter. Sergio was a highly skilled professional, and he wouldn't stay without work for long. He wasn't some gold digger that Ada was afraid to meet. Sergio was different. He was educated, successful, reliable. Upon returning home, Ada, filled with new energy, immersed herself in her school and overflowed with interesting ideas as usual. Sergio, on the other hand, started looking for a job. Unfortunately, luck was not on his side, and he couldn't find anything suitable. Ada didn't rush him. They had enough money. She knew that it was important for a man to find fulfillment in his profession, and she supported her husband in everything. Subordinates and partners were aware that Ada got married, and naturally, they were interested in her chosen one. What does he do for a living? One of the investors, Alejo, once asked. They had known each other for many years. Now the young couple arrived together for a meeting on the development of additional education in the field. He's an engineer, but currently unemployed. By the way, does your company have any suitable positions? He has extensive experience and a good track record, Ada replied. No, there are no available positions right now. But if he's such a great specialist, he won't stay unemployed for long. That's what I thought too, but the situation is such that it's been difficult for him to find a job. It's been 6 months now, Ada explained. 6 months? Alejo raised his eyebrows. 6 months he's hanging over your head? Alejo. Ada interrupted him, annoyed. But she couldn't argue. That's exactly how it was. For the past 6 months, she had been the sole breadwinner of their young family. Ada didn't mind. It wasn't too difficult. Everyone goes through tough times, but spouses should support each other, and yet, despite everything, it didn't look very pretty. And the woman regretted that she had been too sincere with Alejo. Don't you think he's using you? Alejo had the right to ask such a question. He and Ada had known each other for a long time and were considered not only business partners but almost friends. He even hoped for developing their relationship at one point, but respected her refusal. The man had helped Ada in her affairs multiple times, and she didn't leave him in debt. She supported him wherever she could. 3 years ago, Alejo confessed to Ada that he liked her not as a partner or even as a friend, but as a woman. He proposed to start a relationship. Ada immediately refused. It could harm their business collaboration. Besides, Alejo didn't evoke any romantic feelings in her. He was too pragmatic, calculating, serious, just like she herself. Ada was attracted to completely different men, ones who were cheerful, easygoing, and charming, like Sergio. Alejo then suggested forgetting about his words and continuing their interaction as if nothing had happened. Ada happily agreed. Surprisingly, there was no awkwardness or tension between them afterward. Alejo, what are you talking about? He's not using me. When we started dating, Sergio was doing great at his job. So now, when he's in trouble, should I just leave him at the first sign of trouble? But Ada understood that she needed to take immediate action to put Sergio in a situation where he would need to find a job, otherwise, it wouldn't work. Maybe he wouldn't get a luxurious position like before, but he would earn something, do something. It was already awkward in front of acquaintances. Sergio genuinely seemed like a deadbeat to them. And Ada started suggesting options to her husband. Maybe you could come work at my school? Who will I be there? Sergio scoffed. A ballet master? Why? His wife smiled. A part-time safety instructor. Me, a former chief engineer of an oil company? He took offense. Don't talk nonsense. I've already experienced a career downfall, and you're just adding fuel to the fire. So what? Ada replied. You can work part-time and look for something you like. You'll have plenty of time. And have you thought about me, my feelings? What will my colleagues say? You, the boss's wife, have given your useless husband a cozy position. I'll feel like a joke. How can I respect myself after that? Ada pondered. Her husband had a point in his words, but something had to be done about this situation. Maybe you can try starting your own business then? I can provide the initial funding. Come up with an idea, then we're going to discuss a business plan. So, you want to become my investor? Sergio clarified, looking interested. Well, yes. I have some savings, if you. And I actually have an idea, her husband smiled. I've wanted to try opening a cafe. I'll work on the business plan right away. That's wonderful. Ada rejoiced. She liked seeing her husband so enthusiastic. As a more experienced person in business matters, she would help him in the beginning. Everything would be fine for them. As promised, Ada gave Sergio money for development, and he enthusiastically immersed himself in business. Now he had hardly appeared at home. He was always busy with his cafe, traveled to other cities for business, and did everything he could. Sergio told Ada that everything was going great, couldn't be better. According to him, he didn't need any assistance. He was handling everything perfectly on his own. Her husband sincerely thanked Ada for her support. Money started flowing in, and he bought a car on credit, started giving his wife gifts for various occasions. Ada couldn't be happier with her husband. She proudly told others that Sergio was a businessman. But the idyll was over soon. Not even half a year passed when Sergio returned home in a gloomy mood. That's it, he said. I've failed. Competitors crushed me, set me up, and unleashed various authorities on me. They're shutting me down. And now I have a mountain of debt. How is it possible? Ada gasped. Why didn't you ask me for help? It couldn't happen overnight. Maybe we could have avoided this? Well, what's the use now? Sergio waved his hand. I wanted to figure it out on my own, like a man. You already gave me money to start the business. So now, should I hide behind your skirt every time a problem arises? I thought I could handle it myself, but it didn't work out. And once again, Sergio was stuck at home, resuming his job search, which yielded no results. Nevertheless, Ada decided to find out what happened to her husband's business without his knowledge. It turned out that Sergio didn't open a cafe but a third-rate snack bar. He hardly invested anything in its development, cutting corners on everything, including violating sanitation standards. The venture was doomed to failure from the start. It's strange, Ada wondered. She had given Sergio enough money to open a proper business. Where did he spend it? Did he squander it so thoughtlessly? That's where those gifts, those expensive things came from. No, he can't be a good businessman. Ada realized that there are people who are not cut out for entrepreneurship, and it seemed that her husband was one of them. It was disappointing, but they could survive it. What was worse were the debts hanging over Sergio. Every month, Ada had to give him a substantial amount to partially repay his debt. Sergio appeared downtrodden, and Ada felt sorry for him. She couldn't even imagine how she would feel if she were in such a situation. He tried to be helpful, tidying up the house and preparing delicious dinners. Ada enjoyed coming back to this cozy environment, but she understood that it couldn't last forever. It was vital for a man to feel like the provider, the head of the family. Her husband's dejected state proved that his role as a cook and cleaner wasn't suitable for him. Another year passed. During this time, Sergio still wasn't able to find a job. People in Ada's circle directly told her that she got involved with a gold digger, a real Alfonso. Alejo was particularly harsh in his remarks. What kind of husband is he? He's not a husband, he's just a domestic servant. I can't imagine how a man can't earn a living. I've been working since I was 15, and then this. He's going through a difficult period, Ada defended her husband. No one is immune. He's been dragging this period on for too long. Think about whether you need such a relationship. He lives off of everything, drives a nice car. Why does he need to work? Alejo, stop. The woman got angry, but she couldn't find any arguments in Sergio's favor. And then everything suddenly changed. Sergio started spending a lot of time away from home, and he had money again. Her husband's mood clearly improved, and he smiled again. What's going on? Ada asked when her husband once again bought himself a new phone. Where are you getting the money from? Well, I didn't want to tell you earlier. I started providing phone consultations for money. I have a lot of experience, and I'm a high-class specialist, so my advice doesn't come cheap. That's great, Ada exclaimed. You finally found something you enjoy doing. This is just the beginning. Maybe later, I'll start my own agency. I have big plans. No, not that, the woman hastily exclaimed. She still remembered her husband's experience with opening a cafe and how she had to regularly pay off his debts. Do you think I can't do it? Sergio felt clearly offended. Do you think you're the only badass businesswoman we have? No, that's not what I meant, Ada stammered. It's just that not everyone is cut out for business. You still have a lot to learn. We'll see, Sergio retorted and walked into the bedroom. Ada scolded herself for not holding back. It seemed like she had seriously hurt her husband's feelings. It wasn't easy for him to remember the cafe incident, and she had rudely prodded that wound. One day, Ada arrived at the office at an unusual time. She was supposed to attend a meeting at the city hall, but it got canceled. To her surprise, she noticed Sergio's car at the gate. What is happening? Is something wrong? Ada wondered. Her husband rarely showed up at the office, so his arrival seemed more than strange. Ada parked her car, entered the lobby, nodded to the security guard, climbed the stairs, and already on the top floor, she heard voices. Two people were talking, her husband and Luz. I'm giving you money for the last time, Luz declared. Enough. Soon, she will notice everything. I can't keep covering for you forever. Luz, come on, Sergio pleaded. This is for a good cause, you know. Just don't say anything to Ada yet. I don't want her to worry for no reason. Of course, I won't tell her. She won't just pat me on the head for something like this. She's strict, that's for sure, thinks highly of herself. Well, if everything comes out, I'll explain it to my wife. The reason is valid, she knows that. Come on, do this for me, we're not strangers. Ada heard the sound of the safe key turning. Soon, her husband would get what he wanted, money, and he would head towards the car, meeting her on the stairs. Pretending she hadn't heard anything was something she couldn't do. But for some reason, she didn't want to confront him right now. She needed to process what she had heard, gather herself, and plan her course of action. So, while Sergio hadn't come to the stairs yet, Ada slipped into the adjacent office, the accounting department. She spent the rest of the day thinking about what she had learned. She locked herself in her office, buried herself in paperwork, and asked not to be disturbed. So, Sergio takes money from the safe, and not for the first time, judging by his words. Luz gives it to him and apparently covers up the excessive spending in the documents. If the amounts aren't too large, it's easy to do. But why? Sergio said he needed the funds for some noble cause. Why could he tell Luz about it and hide it from his wife? Why would Luz, usually serious and reliable as a rock, help Sergio behind her back in unclear matters? And what is this noble cause? Or maybe, Ada pondered, perhaps her husband had decided to start his own business after all. Again? And knowing his wife's position, who didn't believe in him, he wanted to keep it a secret. But he doesn't have the money to start, so he wheedles it out of Luz. Of course, he knows that most financial matters fall within the director's purview. Yes, that version seems plausible. But the question remains, why Luz? Why does she help Sergio? Out of their old school friendship? But there was no such thing, no friendship at all. In their teenage years, Sergio constantly made fun of Luz's poverty, so it's unlikely she has warm feelings towards him after that. So, what is it then? After wrestling with these questions all day, Ada decided she had had enough. She would ask her friend directly about everything and then sort things out with her husband at home. Whatever the truth was, it was better than remaining in the dark and speculating. By the end of the workday, Ada entered the principal's office. Luz tiredly raised her eyes. As usual, she was working on another report. "We need to talk," said the school owner. Of course, Luz pointed to the chair at her desk. Ada settled comfortably in it and looked at her friend. "Luz, I've always trusted you, you know that." "I know. And judging by your tone, you don't trust me anymore? What's going on?" "That's what I wanted to find out from you. Why do you regularly give money from the safe to my husband? Why didn't you tell me anything?" You know." Luz sighed. "Well, yes. I gave him several amounts, but he does have serious circumstances." "What circumstances?" "He doesn't have money for a new business. I deliberately refused him, and I'm still settling his debts from that cafe." No, it's much more serious," Luz exhaled. "Well, he asked me not to say anything, but since you already know everything, I can't not explain. Sergio's mother is seriously ill, and he sends her money for treatment, otherwise she won't survive." Ada sat there, almost taken aback. She expected anything but this. She had only seen her mother-in-law a couple of times, and Sergio himself had shown no desire to be close to his relatives. She seemed perfectly healthy and pleasant to Ada. And now, it turns out, Sergio's mother is seriously ill. So, Ada tried to regain her composure, "So he came to you with such a hardship instead of coming to me." "Ada, well, it's inconvenient for him, you should understand. He doesn't earn much, can't find his way in life, and now he has to beg you for money for his mother's treatment." "Going behind my back haven't been better, of course," Ada shook her head. "All right, don't give him any more money without my knowledge. Today, I'll talk to him myself and, of course, transfer the necessary amount for his mother's treatment." At home, everything seemed normal at first glance. Sergio had cleaned up, prepared a delicious dinner, and now sat on the couch, with a sense of duty fulfilled, watching some show. Ada approached and turned off the TV. "We're spouses, the closest people," she said, looking into Sergio's eyes. "I want there to be no secrets between us." Her husband noticeably tensed. Ada noticed he began trembling by the look of his eyes. "I know everything. I know about your mother, and I can't understand why you told Luz about it, but not me, at least I'm your wife." "What? She told you everything?" "She had to. I witnessed the scene today when Luz handed you money from the safe. And by the way, have you been lying about these earnings from alleged phone consultations? It's not right, I know, but I didn't want to worry you, didn't want to involve you in all the details. You've been on edge lately as it is. Well, I thought I could handle it quietly. Sergio, spouses should help each other, support each other. That's how I envision a real family. Well, I'm embarrassed, embarrassed." Sergio burst out. "I am a healthy man, I lost a good job, and now I depend on my wife and can't even help my own mother." Ada was taken aback. She always felt at a loss when Sergio appeared so vulnerable. At the same time, she even felt a sense of guilt for her success, an irrational and unpleasant feeling. "All right, calm down." Ada gently ran her hand over her husband's cheek, embracing him, and he responded by wrapping his arms around her waist. "I made lasagna for dinner." Sergio finally broke the silence. "Will you try it and see how it turned out?" "With pleasure, I'm as hungry as a wolf." "And your mother, will everything be okay with her?" "The treatment is showing results. It's very expensive, but the doctors say it's working. Maybe we should visit her together at the hospital tomorrow?" "It's still impossible. They barely let me in myself, only to help with her care. But we'll definitely visit her later." "Okay? I feel awkward not supporting her in such a difficult time." "What do you mean? What about the money for her treatment?" "Money isn't everything. But it's a lot. By the way, there's an additional payment we need to make, and Sergio mentioned a quite substantial amount." "I'll transfer it to you tomorrow," Ada promised. Time passed, and nothing changed. Ada, as before, spent a lot of time and effort on her business, while Sergio continued to search for work. His wife no longer rushed him, understanding that he needed to take care of his sick mother. Her condition turned out to be a serious illness related to immune system loss. According to Sergio, nobody was allowed near her except for him, wearing a protective suit. He was still holding up well. Ada couldn't imagine what it would be like if one of her parents were in such a situation. And, to be completely honest, she enjoyed coming back to a clean, cozy apartment filled with the aroma of delicious food. Sergio was doing a great job with household chores. The woman understood that when he found a job, she would lose these simple pleasures of life. Her relationship with Luz remained the same. Ada forgave her friend for that moment of weakness. Sergio could be persuasive, and besides, the reason was his mother's serious illness. How could she not help? However, Luz's behavior had subtly changed. She no longer approached Ada for a chat during lunch breaks, and they no longer went out to the movies or cafes. Luz made excuses due to business and fatigue, but Ada understood that her friend felt awkward about the situation with Sergio. Perhaps Luz felt guilty, but over time, it would pass. One morning, Ada realized she couldn't get out of bed. Her head was spinning, and dark spots flickered before her eyes. Despite having slept for 8 hours, she felt tired and exhausted, a feeling she had experienced for a while now. "You look horribly worn out," Alejo said to her that day when he stopped by the office for some reason. "Are you okay? Do you need any help?" "Oh, no, I'm just exhausted. Lately, I've had to deal with some school issues, and I'm also working on a new project, so." "I see, you're pushing yourself to the limit," while Sergio lounges on the couch, taking care of himself. "Alejo, please don't start again. Okay? I don't want to discuss it right now." I'm worried about you, the man admitted. I don't like how pale you look. Have you taken a break recently? I can't even remember the last time. You should to a health resort. My sister and her kids had a great time there recently. It's a place for rest, the sea, and excellent doctors. They'll examine you. Maybe you're lacking some vitamins. Dedicate at least a week to yourself, otherwise, you'll completely burn out. You know what? Maybe you're right. Not maybe, but definitely right, Alejo smiled. Take it, here's their phone number. Call them today. I will, Ada saluted. She actually went to that health resort after a preliminary briefing with Luz. Although, truth be told, Ada knew all the details herself, and she could trust her friend. Alejo was right. A break like this was vital for a tired and exhausted woman. Ada enjoyed the deserted beaches at this time of the year, swam in the local pool, and had massages. She regained her spirits, and her usual weakness of late receded, along with the dizziness. In the mirror, instead of pale skin and dark circles under her eyes, she now saw a radiant, lively, and fresh face. Once by the pool, Ada noticed two women. One of them, the older one, bore a striking resemblance to her mother-in-law. Ada squinted her eyes, not completely sure since she had only met Sergio's mother a couple of times in her life, and besides, she couldn't possibly be here. According to her husband, his mother was still in a very critical condition in the hospital. To Ada's surprise, it was indeed her mother-in-law. The elderly woman rose from her sun lounger and walked towards her daughter-in-law. Hello, dear, the lady smiled, looking far from unwell. Is Sergio here with you? No, he stayed at home. I'm here alone. I see. My son told me he's terribly busy with his own business. He's doing well with you, making progress. I'm glad. I thought nothing would ever change him. Busy with his business? Ada became increasingly puzzled. And how about your health? I'm fine. I'm nearly 60, of course, but I can't complain. So you weren't in the hospital for 6 months? You didn't need expensive treatment? I was in the hospital, but not for 6 months, of course. I did a facelift. It's an expensive operation, that's true. My husband paid for it as a gift for our 20th wedding anniversary. Ada's head started spinning, and she had to sit down. She couldn't make sense of any of this. Well, she understood, of course, but she didn't want to believe it. Sergio's mother held her elbow, helping her get comfortable. You suddenly turned pale. What's going on? Why are you asking these strange questions about my health? Ada told this pleasant, radiant woman everything. She shared Sergio's job loss, his numerous unsuccessful attempts to find a new position, and the story of the money for his mother's treatment. As the story unfolded, the mother-in-law's face grew darker and darker. So, he's at it again. Clearly, he can't change himself. Well, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, as they say. It's the genes. I feel sorry for you, my dear. Run away from him before it's too late. The only upside is that you don't have any children. Please, explain to me what's going on. Ada looked at her mother-in-law with hope. I will, Sergio's mother sighed, settling down beside her. But the story is long and not very pleasant. Sergio came into the world after a short and brief affair between his mother and a university professor who was visiting their city. The professor claimed to be captivated by the beauty of the young department employee, spoke of never having met such a beauty, and sang about kindred spirits and the remarkable meeting of two halves. Of course, this charming and charismatic man introduced himself as unmarried, so the future mother of Sergio immersed herself in a passionate relationship without any guilt, believing her lover's promises that it would inevitably lead to something serious. And so it happened. The man stayed in their city for a month. Closer to his departure, the young woman, already mentally preparing for the wedding, learned an unpleasant truth from her colleagues. It turned out that this person had a wife and 3 children in his hometown. And, of course, he had no intention of changing anything in his life. "Well, is it the big deal, baby?" The man didn't flinch, listening to the complaints of his young mistress. "After all, we had a good time. It was fun, easy, and fantastic. You liked it, don't deny it. And now, imagine if you had known about my wife and children from the start, most likely, our joyful adventure would never have happened. And who would be better off because of that?" He left, and the woman, with a broken heart, soon discovered that she was pregnant. On schedule, Luz gave birth to a boy, handsome, healthy, and strong. "He's going to be a heartthrob," noted the old midwife. "To other people, all babies look the same, but I've got a good eye. I've seen many in my life. This one will be a heartthrob." And so it turned out. Sergio grew up as a very attractive and charming child with a powerful charisma. He was adored by women from a very young age. Even in kindergarten, girls would fight over him, and even the teachers tried to give the cute little boy an extra portion of baked pudding with condensed milk. And in school, especially in high school, so many things were done to win the young Sergio's heart. His mother often had to console and calm down his passionate admirers. Sergio inherited his father's looks and charm. Unfortunately, he also inherited the habit of lying from his carefree parent. He would spontaneously invent the most incredible facts about his own biography and present them to others quite convincingly. Surprisingly, people believed him, as Sergio possessed an innate power of persuasion. His mother was upset about this. She tried to help her son, took him to psychologists and even psychiatrists. But no one found any deviations. Sergio performed poorly in school, although he was a capable boy. He didn't like studying and much preferred interacting with people of all ages. His mother could see clearly that her child was adept at manipulating others, but he couldn't manipulate her. When Sergio was about 13, his mother got married. It was a fortunate match with a good, wealthy man who owned a small dairy farm. Unlike Sergio's father, this man was always honest with his wife and supported her in everything. Soon, they had a daughter together. At that time, Sergio became extremely jealous and fabricated such heart-wrenching stories that he was almost taken away by the authorities. That incident made him realize he had gone too far, and he became more cautious. Over time, Sergio perfected his skills of lying and manipulation. Thanks to these skills, he graduated from college. However, he had no interest in working. He tried it but didn't like it. Sergio preferred to live off others. He would either beg his stepfather for money or come up with various schemes involving friends and relatives. Eventually, he adapted to living off wealthy women who were willing to support a charming young man with an amazing sense of humor, blue eyes, and adorable dimples. His mother was deeply hurt to see her son grow up into such an unworthy man. She partly blamed herself for not being able to raise him properly, although she had tried. She attempted to explain everything with the bad genes from his father, which made her feel slightly better. Her favorite saying became, "The apple doesn't fall far from the tree." Sergio had long been living his own life, rarely visiting home and hardly maintaining any connection with his family. But one day, he called and announced that he was getting married to Ada. His mother was happy for him and hoped that marriage would change him. She believed that marriage was a responsible step indicating serious changes in Sergio's worldview. He said he would introduce his future wife to them and gave strict instructions on what topics were allowed to be discussed and which ones were better left alone. Sergio's mother really liked Ada, her future daughter-in-law. She was organized, ambitious, and had achieved a lot at such a young age. She was actually Sergio's classmate, but for some reason, the woman didn't remember her at all. Time passed, and Sergio lived with his wife. As it seemed to his mother, everything was going well for them. Although Sergio mentioned that his spouse was against close interaction with his relatives, the woman wasn't offended by it as she could understand it. After all, the important thing was that her son was in good hands and seemed to be happy. Sergio once boasted that he now had his own business. At first, his mother didn't believe him, but then she saw him buying expensive cars and watches, using the latest phone models, and she understood that he had indeed gotten his act together. Otherwise, where would he get all these luxurious things? And now, this meeting with the daughter-in-law at the sanatorium. It turned out that Ada believed her mother-in-law was in the hospital, and she regularly sent money for her treatment. Meanwhile, Sergio, without a trace of conscience, was spending that money on himself, his beloved self. Sergio had once again managed to create a beautiful life for himself at someone else's expense, but this time his lies had gone too far. "I can't believe it," Ada muttered. The tears were running down her cheeks, but the woman didn't even notice. Her entire world collapsed overnight. The person she had loved since school, with whom she had spent several years, turned out to be nothing more than a pathological liar and a gold digger. Ada constantly justified him, pitied him, supported him, and he gladly took advantage of her and her money. "It was also difficult for me to admit that my son is such a person," sighed the mother-in-law, "even more difficult than for you." "I can imagine," mumbled Ada. "Your situation is easier. Run away from him before it's too late. Sweep him out of your life. He will try to convince you, he will come up with something. But don't listen to Sergio, he cannot be trusted. It's so hard. Not easy, yes, but possible. I even envy you a little. You can erase him from your life, but I can't. After all, he's my son." "Thank you for being honest," Ada weakly smiled. "And now I need to go to my room to think it all through." Of course, the mother-in-law's gaze revealed a mixture of warmth, compassion, and guilt. In Ada's room, the first thing she did was throw herself on the bed and let her emotions take over. She had never cried like this before. The entire pillow was soaked with tears, and she had to dry the pillowcase with a hairdryer. Sergio didn't know his father, not even his name. Growing up, he realized that his mother also considered this person almost a stranger. The result of a fleeting, accidental romance, that's who Sergio was. Whoever his father was, Sergio was grateful to him for passing on his natural charm and advantageous looks. These qualities clearly did not come from his mother, which meant they came from the other parent. But from whom? Even as a child, Sergio realized his main strengths, the ability to be liked by people, to charm and attract attention. From an early age, he learned to manipulate others, starting with the caregivers, then the teachers and classmates. The boy always knew that if he wanted something from anyone, he would definitely achieve it, and easily at that. It didn't matter what it was, an extra portion of a juice, a rare gum wrapper, concert tickets, or the best role in a school play. Sergio initially sincerely believed that everyone could do the same, but then, to his surprise and delight, he realized that his abilities were somewhat unique. It greatly boosted the boy's self-esteem. The only person who remained unaffected by his influence was his mother. Sometimes it seemed to the boy that she didn't love him, just tolerated him. Then he figured it out. Perhaps his mother saw in him traits of his father, the man who had once broken her heart, and that's where such a hostility came from. Sergio felt hurt, especially in his childhood, but then he stopped caring about his mother's attitude. He had more than enough love and attention from others, he took it all from those around him. And besides, he had other relatives, grandmother, grandfather, aunt. They cherished the charming, clever child and tried to please him despite his mother's protests. "You're spoiling him," she claimed. "Love can't spoil anyone," the grandmother objected. "The boy doesn't have a father, he needs special attention," the grandfather supported his wife. And the aunt just smiled affectionately and handed her beloved nephew money for small expenses. As Sergio grew older, he realized that he had a talent for entertaining and organizing people. His classmates often told him that being with him was always fun and easy. He even earned an honorable nickname, the life of the party. Sergio himself didn't understand how it came so naturally to him, everything just seemed to flow effortlessly. He simply knew what people needed and wanted. Sergio never had any trouble with socializing. He was always at the center of attention, friends with athletes and top students, and pursued by the popular girls at school. Of course, Sergio took advantage of his position. In his later years of high school, he gained invaluable experience in interacting with women, understanding their expectations from a partner, and learning how to charm and make them fall for him. Sergio planned to use this knowledge to his advantage. He had always dreamed of a beautiful life. In the past, his mother struggled to provide for him alone, and dreaming of luxuries like expensive gadgets and trips to the seaside was out of the question. Then his stepfather came into his life, the owner of a local dairy farm, and everything changed. Now they lived in a spacious cottage filled with modern technology. They flew to the seaside every year, staying in luxurious hotels and dressing only in branded boutiques. Sergio realized that his stepfather was his ticket to happiness and used all his abilities to impress him and gain his trust. As always, it worked like a charm. His stepfather boasted to everyone about what a wonderful stepson he had. The veil finally lifted from his stepfather's eyes, but much later. For a long time, despite his wife's skeptical attitude, he remained convinced that his adopted son was a gift from fate and even made plans to pass on the business to him. After all, he and his new wife had a daughter together, Sergio's younger half-sister. The man was happy and believed that the business should be entrusted to Sergio's capable and reliable hands. Sergio pretended to be interested in his stepfather's affairs, although he didn't understand much about them, nor did he honestly want to. But the man's eyes would light up with joy whenever Sergio asked him questions about the dairy farm. Sergio dreamed of being like his stepfather, wealthy, serious, influential, with everyone bowing down to him. He understood that his mother's husband would definitely help him establish himself in life, but he knew that he had to put in effort, work, and toil. And that was something Sergio didn't like. In school, he was an average student. He didn't like the idea of poring over textbooks. Parties, socializing, and romances attracted him more. In his senior years, he realized that the path of hard work wasn't for him. He couldn't imagine studying in college for another 5 years and then starting from scratch, working somewhere for meager wages. Even if it wasn't for meager wages, his stepfather would surely find him a more interesting position, but still. He would have to wake up every morning, go to work, do something, and listen to the boss's scolding. No, that option didn't suit him. Sergio wanted everything and wanted it all at once, and he saw a different path to his dream. He eventually enrolled in university, pressured by his mother and stepfather. And he even graduated, receiving an engineering diploma. Sergio approached his exams using his usual scheme, turning on his natural charm, lying, flattering, basically doing everything as always. The only difference was that he had no intention of working in his field. His parents refused to financially support their grown-up son, thinking it would scare him. They didn't know that he had been dating Katerina for a long time. They met at a club. A young student and a wealthy, bored middle-aged woman, the widow of a rich and influential person who had inherited his vast fortune. They became lovers. Katerina was attracted to the youth and energy of the handsome young man, while he was enticed by her money. Their relationship resembled a mutually beneficial partnership. Katerina spared no expense, buying expensive gifts for the student, watches, clothes, phones, and even renting an apartment for him. She didn't offer to live together because she had teenage children who would react negatively to such a turn of events. Sergio was perfectly happy with this arrangement of separate romantic encounters. It was even more fun that way. Sergio told his family that he had found a job at a local oil company, supposedly as the chief engineer. His mother didn't believe him right away. His stepfather initially rejoiced, but then used his connections and realized that his wife was right. "I don't know where you're getting your money from, but you're not officially employed anywhere," the man told him. "I've checked it. I ask you to stay away from my family because you're dangerous, a pathological liar, lazy, and on top of that, you obtained the money by clearly dishonest means." "I got it. I'm not a fool," Sergio smirked. "I'll leave, but first I'll fight for my share of the house. I know my rights." Who would have doubted that? His stepfather sold Sergio his share of the house, paying several times the market value. The young man wouldn't settle for less. Now nothing tied him to the family, and he felt no trace of conscience or worry about it. He knew he wouldn't be left with nothing. In the worst-case scenario, he would go to his mother, apologize, and she would accept him, reluctantly but still support him. She was easily manipulated by playing on her sense of guilt. She gave birth to a son from an unknown man, never loved him, and now she had removed him from the family as well. Sergio understood perfectly well that all of this wasn't easy for his mother. And that was wonderful. He would have her as plan B, which, he hoped, he wouldn't have to resort to. His relationship with Katerina ended suddenly. All this time she had been looking for a husband abroad, and she finally found one. He took her and her children with him. It was much easier for women to arrange their fate. "I'll miss you," Katerina whispered in his ear on their last night together. "I will miss you too," Sergio squeezed her in his arms. "You're lying." She was right. Of course, Sergio had no intention of missing her. Katerina's money was the only thing he didn't want to part with. She left him a substantial sum as a farewell gift. It was pleasant, of course, but Sergio knew it wouldn't last long. He was used to living a cheerful and luxurious life. Would he really have to find a job? But resorting to this extreme measure was not necessary because soon Agata took Katerina's place. She was a well-groomed and stunning woman in her early 40s. Sergio even fell in love with her a little, never imagining he was capable of such feelings. He liked almost everything about Agata: her impeccable figure, soft and tender skin, long silky hair, easygoing nature, and sense of humor. The only downside was her husband, as she was married to a well-known businessman in the city. Sergio was well aware that if their affair ceased to be a secret, he would be in trouble. It made him to enjoy and thrill their meetings even more. It seemed that Agata also enjoyed the special thrill of having to hide their relationship. Their affair resembled a game or the plot of an interesting movie. Like Katerina, Agata was generous. She showered her young lover with even more expensive gifts, buying him a beautiful car, a small studio apartment, and sending him on several trips to luxurious resorts. Sergio could comfortably ask her for anything he needed. This life completely satisfied him. He didn't have to work, and yet he lived much better than his acquaintances who toiled from dawn to dusk for meager wages at local enterprises. Agata disappeared from his life in almost the same way as Katerina did. She and her husband moved to another country. Olivia took her place. However, she wasn't as wealthy and didn't possess the luxurious appearance of Sergio's previous passions. But there was no choice, especially since this lonely, not-so-young woman was willing to do practically anything for her young lover. Money was no object to her. Yet Sergio quickly grew tired of the relationship. Olivia exhausted him with her constant care. They lived together, went on vacations together, and spent all their time together. She cooked delicious meals for him, washed and ironed his shirts, called him silly affectionate nicknames, and gazed at him with admiring, beseeching eyes. It was hard to endure. One day, Sergio realized it was time to find a way out of the situation. Olivia had already introduced him to all her relatives, and hints of marriage had turned into explicit requests, almost demands. That's when the classmates' meeting came along. Sergio was delighted to spend the evening without the intrusive Olivia, since people usually attend such events without their significant others. He prepared himself, wanting to make an impression on his former classmates. He wore one of the branded suits gifted by Olivia, didn't forget about his expensive watch, and even got a manicure. He looked absolutely magnificent, like a Hollywood star attending a prestigious award ceremony, only lacking the red carpet. Of course, he had the desired effect on those gathered. Women devoured him with their eyes, and men looked at him with respect. Sergio portrayed the image of a successful, respectable individual. He felt like the soul of the company once again and everyone's favorite, just like in school, and he greatly enjoyed that feeling. Sergio adopted a suitable course of behavior, or so he thought. Yes, he was the wealthiest among all present, but he remained the same guy, a joker and a fun-loving person. Only there were no more hurtful jokes. Now everyone around him felt comfortable and at ease. Ada immediately caught Sergio's attention. His former classmate looked absolutely stunning, fresh, radiant skin, shiny hair, and a magnificent figure. She was stylishly dressed but not catchy. Sergio, who knew a thing or two about designer clothes, understood that these items were very expensive. There was no ring on Ada's finger, indicating that she wasn't married. So where did all this elegance come from? Clearly, she was very wealthy, unlikely to have inherited her parents' fortune. Sergio remembered from their school days that Ada's family was not even middle class, but rather poor. From their conversation, he gathered some information. It turned out that the timid mouse had managed to build her own business. And what a business it was! She was the owner of the most prestigious dance school, or rather, a network of schools. Sergio had certainly heard about this dance school network before. A plan quickly formed in his mind. This was his chance to get rid of the annoying, overweight old woman, Olivia. Ada was young, attractive, and much more affluent. Perhaps she could help him achieve something in life. Sergio was tired of depending on women by this point, but he still wasn't ready for serious work under someone else. It was possible that Ada could offer him some options, find a place for him in her business, maybe even make him a director. Being a director was no big deal, just delegate tasks left and right. It seemed like Luz, another classmate of theirs, was currently occupying that position. She had also grown up in poverty, but that was easy to fix. And so, Sergio unleashed the full force of his charm on the unsuspecting Ada. It was easy, even too easy. Ada responded immediately. Sergio noticed how she melted under his gaze, sought eye contact, and became slightly flustered. Starting a relationship proved to be a simple task. Just a month after their meeting, Ada invited him to move in with her. Sergio happily agreed. He had an unpleasant conversation with Olivia. As expected, she hysterically cried, begged, and pleaded, but Sergio was resolute. He had already made up his mind. He closed the door behind him, leaving the sobbing woman in the apartment. How delighted he was that he would no longer have to see her. However, Olivia didn't give up for some time. She called, sent him pleading messages, tried to convince him. But one day, she saw him with Ada at the shopping center. It happened by chance. Sergio walked by, pretending they weren't acquainted, but held Ada tighter around her slender waist. That evening, Olivia sent a farewell message to her beloved. "I saw you with your new girlfriend. She is young, beautiful, slim. I can't compare to her. You love her, that's obvious, and she loves you too. I won't bother you anymore." Ada loved Sergio, and like all his previous lovers, she was not stingy with gifts. She sympathized with her husband, whom she claimed had been unjustly dismissed from his position as the chief engineer in an oil company due to new management. She supported her husband and patiently waited for him to find a new job. But he didn't actually look for one, he just pretended doing so. His plan to become the director of the dance school failed. It turned out that it wasn't as trouble-free a position as he had imagined. Luz would sometimes work nights on some reports, and he had no intention of delving into all that. Besides, Ada was perfectly content with her friend's work and constantly praised it. His wife wouldn't trade such a competent specialist for him, someone who didn't understand anything about her business. For some time, everything was going great. Ada was working hard, and Sergio pretended to be actively searching for a job, always disappointed with the supposedly offered positions. But then his wife became more insistent. She hinted several times that it didn't look very good for the husband to be sitting on the couch while she worked. She suggested some ridiculous options, like hiring him part-time at her school for some demeaning position. Sergio, of course, acted as expected. He pressed Ada with a sense of guilt, evoked sympathy, and promised the world. The woman fell for it, but with difficulty. Her persistence began to irritate and exhaust Sergio. He knew his wife wouldn't give him peace like Olivia did. If Olivia had known how it would turn out, he would have never left her. But now there was nowhere to return. Sergio knew that things weren't going well for her. His former lover was no longer the chief accountant of a thriving company, but an unemployed woman with health problems. And also, Ada's attitude was starting to bother Sergio. She clearly started placing herself above him. He was the servant, the loser, the lazy one, while his wife was a successful entrepreneur, the breadwinner, smart and affluent. That's how it was. His wife emphasized that she was in charge, that Sergio depended on her. Before, his wife used to transfer money to his card 3 or 4 times a month. Now he had to remind her of that, and sometimes even come up with excuses. It was unpleasant, even humiliating. Every time Ada sighed, she would bring up the topic of work again. Sergio lied, made excuses, promised something. He even started being frugal because these conversations with Ada bothered him so much that he tried to postpone them. But as always, Sergio found a way out of the situation, and he acted in his usual way, through a woman. Sergio had noticed how Luz, Ada's former classmate and now the director of the dance school, was looking at him. She had been infatuated with him even in school and had even confessed her feelings to him at some point. Back then, Sergio didn't take her seriously. She was a girl from a poor family with an ordinary appearance. Why would he choose her when there were plenty of attractive girls around? But now everything had changed. Luz was the director, making important financial decisions for the company. She could help him. Sergio began to manipulate her in advance. He started visiting the office more often and paying attention to Luz. He would give compliments, make jokes, and throw seductive glances. The experienced charmer could clearly see that his manipulations were having the desired effect. Luz opened up to him more and more. It had become a habit for her to talk to her friend's husband. Sergio patiently listened to Luz's stories about all her friends and relatives, and during moments when she confided her worries and anxieties, and managed to insert a couple of phrases at the right time. And then one day, he understood that it was time to take action. "I never thought you were such a sensitive and profound person," Luz said, looking directly into Sergio's eyes. "You acted completely differently in school." "We were all fools in school," Sergio parried. "I think you're my kindred spirit," the woman confessed. "I have the exact same feeling." Suddenly, Sergio approached Luz, looked into her eyes for a long moment. She leaned slightly towards him, and he took advantage of that impulse and kissed her. "What are we doing?" Luz murmured, lowering her gaze. "This is not right. If Ada finds out, she's my friend. And my boss, by the way." "She won't find out. No need to worry her," Sergio firmly declared. "She already has enough problems on her plate." "But I can't help it." "Me neither," Luz admitted. They became lovers. Their meetings mostly took place at Luz's apartment. Sergio assessed the situation with an experienced eye. Yes, Ada clearly didn't skimp on salaries and bonuses for her right-hand woman. It was evident that the dance school director was financially well off. However, Sergio had no intention of exploiting Luz like his previous passions. He had much grander plans for her. With her help, he intended to take away Ada's business. Although it was not a quick process, he needed money right now. So Sergio had to invent a story about his sick mother. His mother never loved him and never helped him in any way, so let her be useful this time. This reason proved to be respectable enough for Luz. "What a nightmare!" she sincerely exclaimed after listening to Sergio's pitiful story. "I feel so sorry for your mother and for you. But why don't you ask Ada for money? I know her, she won't refuse. Look, I'm still a man, but I'm in a difficult situation right now. I got fired, you know, a new broom sweeps clean, and so on. It's already humiliating for me to live off my wife. She constantly reproaches me for every penny, insults me in every possible way, and now there's such a large amount. If you refuse, then, of course, I'll have to turn to her. My mother's life is more important than my pride, but..." "No, of course not, I won't refuse," Luz exclaimed fervently. As always, Sergio hit the mark. The woman was in love with him. What is more, it was combined with feelings of pity and the desire to take care of a loved one, constituted the perfect combination. Since then, Sergio embarked on a deliberate campaign to destroy the relationship between the two friends. It wasn't difficult. Mentioning hurtful remarks supposedly made by his wife about him or Luz in passing, stories about successful Ada's contemptuous attitude towards those less fortunate in life. Sergio skillfully and diligently created an image of a cold, heartless woman who would stop at nothing to achieve her goals. Of course, she knew how to pretend, knew how to please people, but he was her husband, the closest person, and he saw her true face. He needed all of this to realize his long-term plan. If everything went well, he would never have to scheme to get money from women again. Luz gave him the necessary amount for his mother's treatment, and then, after some time, Sergio intended to use this flow of money again. But Ada found out about everything, accidentally eavesdropping on their conversation with Luz. He had to come up with a story about his mother's serious illness. It seemed that his wife believed it and even gave money for the treatment. But a new problem arose: his wife's desire to visit his mother. Constantly making excuses that no one was allowed to visit her would not work. Ada had already started gathering information about the diagnosis, searching for the best specialists. It could go too far. Sergio didn't know how to handle such a situation just yet. The decision came unexpectedly. Ada began complaining about chronic fatigue. Indeed, his wife looked unwell, she was pale, and there were dark circles under her eyes. She decided to take a rest at a health resort. One of the colleagues suggested her this idea. Well, it was very opportune. Sergio needed to prepare for his wife's departure. Luz had already been groomed and was ready for anything. She agreed to prepare the documents that would transfer Ada's business into Sergio's hands. He used all his natural abilities and experience to convince her. We will finally be together, and we will have everything we need for happiness. We'll make Ada the director of the same school and won't offend her with the salary. I want to be with you. I'm tired of hiding, but you know she won't forgive us for this. If everything is revealed, of course, she'll fire you, and I don't have a job right now either. How will we live? After thinking it over and somehow appeasing her own conscience, Luz presented the unsuspecting Ada with a stack of ordinary documents to sign. Ada had grown accustomed to trusting her friend. Moreover, lately, she had been feeling very unwell, and the upcoming trip to the health resort occupied her thoughts. In short, the woman, who did not expect such betrayal, signed everything and flew to the seaside that same evening. Sergio was overjoyed. He was now the owner of a network of dance schools, a highly profitable business, and he had Luz's heart, who knew how to manage it all. What more could he dream of? Ada would stay at the sanatorium for almost a month. During that time, he would establish his control here. Sergio had already taken care of preventing anyone from contacting his wife and informing her of what was happening. He had hidden her phone right before the trip. He had to buy a new one and insert a different SIM card. Her old phone could have been restored, but Sergio, who had volunteered to solve the problem himself, allegedly didn't think about it. Thus, his wife flew away with a new number that only a few close people knew about, him and Luz. They certainly had no intention of telling her anything. Now Sergio was in charge, so he got to work. First, he replaced the employees in managerial positions. He didn't want his wife's people working in his company. Luz tried to object, saying that the new specialists wouldn't immediately understand all the nuances and that they shouldn't rush into decisions. But Sergio already felt like the owner and was completely confident. He knew better. Besides, he had Luz, the unwavering director who was aware of all the issues. Then Sergio raised the prices for subscriptions, abolished benefits, initiated renovations, changed the name of the school, and made a series of decisions that left Luz shocked. She had to deal with the consequences of such management. Just like at the beginning of her career, the woman now found herself working late into the night in the office. But while before there were prospects for growth and development, now the director realized that the sky was falling. And she still had to explain herself to Ada when she returned. Luz dreaded their upcoming meeting. On the other hand, Sergio was not worried at all. He eagerly awaited his wife's arrival. Soon, very soon, a beautiful, dramatic scene would unfold, his triumph and her defeat. The expression of superiority and self-satisfaction would finally be wiped off his wife's face. Ada had a wonderful rest. She regained her strength, reflected on what she learned from her mother-in-law, and made the decision to divorce her husband immediately upon her return. Sergio was not at all who he had pretended to be all these years. How could she have not noticed anything before? How could she have accepted that he was using her? It was so obvious. Ada opened the door with her key and entered the living room. A sleepy Sergio came out of the bedroom. It was a usual sight, almost noon, and he was still in bed. "Welcome back," her husband smiled. "How was your trip?" "Excellent," Ada replied in a cold tone. At that moment, her spouse repulsed her to the point of nausea. How could she have ever loved him? Perceptive Sergio immediately sensed something was wrong. "Something happened?" he asked. "Yes, indeed. We need to have a serious talk." "What a coincidence." Her husband's smile widened even more. "I also have a serious conversation to have with you." "Did you finally find a job?" Ada couldn't help but be sarcastic. "Can I congratulate you?" "God bless your sense of humor," Sergio smirked. "But it's you who deserves congratulations. Should I tell you or wait for you to find out on your own? What do you prefer?" "What are you talking about?" The woman began to worry. "Speak your mind." And Sergio told her everything. About his affair with Luz, their dealings, his full control over the business, and even his initial steps in this new role. Ada listened and understood. Every word was true. Of course, she didn't want to believe it, but she realized that Sergio was fully capable of such things after her conversation with her mother-in-law. Her husband was not the person she thought he was. "Get out of here," she said wearily. "I don't want to see you. You didn't even take the apartment, did you? Why would I need your dump? I've already found a 2-story apartment in the city center for myself. I just wanted to meet you and personally inform you about everything and see your reaction," Sergio replied. "So, did you like it? Pack your things and leave." "I already have, just a few small things left." Sergio left. Ada sat on the couch, hugged her knees, and pondered. Her dance school, her creation, her treasure. She had built this business from scratch, investing not only money and time, but also her soul. It took so much effort to assemble an excellent team and earn an impeccable reputation. They had even begun to expand internationally. Sergio took it all away from her. He took it and would destroy it, there was no doubt about that. He had already started. But what about Luz? Well, Sergio might be insane, but how could she go along with it? Without her, he wouldn't have been able to do it. Did she really adore him that much? And yet, Ada was no better herself. What should she do now? Leave everything as it was? No, never. Ada wanted to make Sergio suffer, to make him feel everything she was feeling now, but multiplied many times over. The woman began to contemplate. What did Sergio love most about Luz? Of course, money and the luxurious life they could lead with it. She would make sure her soon-to-be ex-husband ended up without means and burdened with debts as soon as possible. Alejo had been hopelessly in love with Ada ever since he first met her at one of their early joint meetings at the town hall. The young and ambitious girl captivated him with her enthusiasm, energy, and organization. She hadn't even finished university yet, but she had already opened a dance school. The young entrepreneur's decisions impressed him with their originality and adequacy. There was so much to learn from her. Of course, in the world of business, Ada was initially an inexperienced newcomer who needed support, and Alejo turned out to be one of the investors who offered it to her. It wasn't so much for the sake of increasing his capital, but for the opportunity to be with Ada, to talk to her, and to see her beautiful brown eyes. The more Alejo got to know her, the more he liked her. There was no trace of coquetry or arrogance, only constructive dialogues, sharp intellect combined with a great sense. They gradually grew closer and became good friends over the years of collaboration. However, Alejo wanted more. One day, he mustered the courage to confess his feelings to Ada, but she didn't respond with the same sentiment. It hurt Alejo deeply, very deeply. Nevertheless, he respectfully accepted her decision and suggested to forget about this situation and continue their communication as if nothing had happened. He didn't want any tension to arise between them. Friends were just friends. Apparently, Ada liked the idea because she gladly accepted his proposal, and neither of them mentioned that conversation again. Alejo couldn't understand Ada's choice. She married the handsome but utterly ill-suited Sergio. Yes, he was charming, knew how to please others, and had a certain charisma. But how could Ada not see that she had burdened herself with a typical hustler? She was a smart, very intelligent woman, perceptive, sensitive, and strong. Otherwise, she wouldn't have survived in the world of big business. A couple of times, Alejo tried to bring up the topic of Ada's spouse, but each time she reacted painfully, so he decided not to touch that subject. But something unimaginable happened recently. Ada disappeared. According to rumors, she went away to the seaside, but before that, she transferred the business to her husband, who immediately eagerly started dismantling the enterprise to which she had dedicated her entire life. Alejo understood that something was fishy here and eagerly awaited Ada's return. He even considered reporting to the police if she didn't reappear within a few weeks because it all seemed suspicious. Ada was away. Her phone was constantly turned off, and during that time Sergio and Luz were making decisions about her business as they pleased. But Ada called herself. "Where have you been?" Alejo felt a heavy weight lift from his heart. All this time, he had been worried for his beloved person. "I was resting at a health resort," Ada replied grimly. "Do you know what's happening?" "I do," Ada responded darkly. "How could you let this happen? Why did you hand the business over?" "Alejo, my closest people manipulated me." "You were right about Sergio. He's a scoundrel. I need help right now, your help." "Anything," Alejo promised. "I can start by beating him. No need for violence. Although I initially wanted to do that myself, right now I need support of a different kind, and quickly. Otherwise, that jerk will completely destroy everything. I have a plan." Alejo listened to Ada's thoughts and smiled. "It's better not to cross your path." "You're right," she agreed. Sergio realized that things weren't going well for him. He expected enormous profits, especially after taking all the measures. For example, he raised the prices of services and reduced salaries. But in reality, it turned out differently. High-class teachers were leaving, they were not satisfied with the new management strategy, and no one wanted to work for pennies, especially when there were plenty of opportunities for in-demand choreographers elsewhere. Along with the teachers, students were leaving, and new ones were hardly appearing. The prices of subscriptions were scaring everyone away. Reserves had to be spent, otherwise, it would be impossible to cover the rent and utilities, and even taking a loan at a fairly high interest rate was not approved. Luz was also exacerbating the situation, hounding him every day with some reports. Sergio didn't even try to delve into it. It was clear that there was nothing good there. And then this Alejo showed up in his office. The investor expressed a desire to meet the new owner of the school, inquired about how things were going. Sergio laid out everything about the financial problems. The investor pondered and proposed a solution that couldn't be refused. Sergio simply needed to take out another loan, a quite substantial one, and invest in Alejo's company. "Just within a month, you will start making substantial profits, and then I will resume investing in you." That's exactly how we worked with Ada, following the principle of one hand washes the other. Well, doing business with a man is even more pleasant. Sergio did everything as instructed by the visitor. Although Luz mentioned something about Alejo's special attitude towards Ada. "You can't trust him 100%, she claimed. "He's after Ada." "Oh, shut up, you've become annoying," Sergio waved her off. "Who's the head here, you or me? He's a decent guy. Everything will be okay." But Sergio was wrong. In just a month, he not only didn't receive the promised profits, but also ended up in a worse position than ever before. Alejo's company, in which he had invested a significant amount of credit, went bankrupt, despite no signs of such an outcome. As a result, Sergio found himself drowning in debt, with the majority of it falling squarely on his shoulders. Unexpectedly, tax and labor inspections were initiated, revealing numerous violations for which the responsibility ultimately rested on the leader, Sergio. He grabbed his head in despair. It was a complete collapse. He had thought that taking the helm of a well-established business would make him wealthy. Instead, the man was now burdened with a multitude of problems. Sergio, like a bad captain, escaped from a sinking ship faster than anyone else, but the debts remained, and the threat of criminal punishment loomed over him. Lou suffered the same fate since she had agreed to be Sergio's co-signer. But the problems didn't end there. Enforcement officers were after him, and he didn't even have money for food. Luckily, many luxurious items from his previous life remained: branded suits, expensive watches, an apartment, and a car. He had to sell everything. It was particularly difficult for Sergio to part with his beloved foreign car. Behind the wheel of such a vehicle, he had felt like the king of the world. But what could he do? One had to live somehow. However, the money that came into his accounts would immediately disappear, with a large portion being seized by judicial bailiffs. After all, the debts had to be repaid. The man had never felt so vulnerable and weak. He, an aesthete and lover of the good life, was now forced to squeeze into a cramped apartment in one of the city's outskirts and use public transport facilities. He had almost no money left, so he had to start looking for work. It turned out that even finding a job with a meager salary was not so easy for someone with a practically clean employment record. Sergio, as he had done many times before, tried to find a new lady of the heart willing to support him. Luz was no longer a prospect in that regard. She herself was burdened with many debts, so she sold her prestigious property and car and moved in with her mother, into the very apartment from which she had dreamt of escaping her whole childhood. It was said that she was in a depressed state, but Sergio no longer cared. He didn't know how to pity anyone and never formed genuine attachments to anyone. But a woman who was willing to take a handsome, charismatic man under her wing still eluded him. Sergio wasn't in the right shape anymore, not at all. In his youth, he never had to make any effort. His advantageous appearance and natural charm did all the work. But now, this carefully constructed image no longer appeared as attractive in the eyes of the beautiful half of humanity. And then, that same Alejo appeared, polished, successful, and affluent. He said that these things happen. One of his companies had gone bankrupt, and he supposedly felt guilty towards Sergio, which is why he offered to buy Sergio's crumbling, loss-making business for a laughable price, of course. But it's still better than nothing, Sergio reasoned. It would be enough for designer clothes from a luxury boutique, a trip to a spa salon, and a ticket to a prestigious nightclub. Perhaps luck would smile upon him again, and he would find a wealthy lady of the heart. This time he wouldn't miss his chance. He would be smarter and more cautious. Sergio arrived at the buyer's office to sign the documents. To his astonishment, besides Alejo, he also saw his ex-wife, Ada, in the room. Ada looked stunning. She sat in the chair, exuding confidence and a hint of relaxation, smiling kindly. Sergio instantly understood everything. He realized that he was deceived. Curses, like chickens, come home to roost, Ada smirked, handing the contract to her ex-husband. Put your signature here and finally give me what's mine by right. You have no idea how long I'll have to clean up after you now. In just a couple of months of your reign, you almost ruined the business of my life. You'll manage, Alejo confidently stated, addressing Ada only. Sergio didn't even register. I won't sign. Sergio took a step back. He wanted to hurt this smug woman somehow while he still had the chance. It's your choice, Alejo finally acknowledged the presence of the cuckold. But the debts are growing day by day like a snowball, and it all hangs over you. Soon, you won't be able to escape with just fines, you will go to prison. Reluctantly, Sergio signed the contract. He understood that he had no other choice. Ada would revive her business, there was no doubt about that. As for himself, he could try to rely on his parents. His stepfather seemed to be doing fairly well. Why not give it a try?
If you're enjoying it as well, leave a like and subscribe.